Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Irwan Piarhab from UITM Cawangan Pulau Pinang. Today I'll be presenting on my research ICT facilitation of academic assessment process involving individually varied and complex engineering parameters. Problem statements. What is the current situation? Pandemic are on the rise, forcing wide-ranging lockdown and more restrictions, and teaching and learning process or TNL, push online through open and distance learning or ODL, and online learning OL. What's wrong with the current situation? Students' real engagement to the learning process difficult to gauge, because we could not see how students actually listen into the learning, into the lectures, or even into the explanation given by the lecturers. It's not visible because of the distance. And also, in the next instance, students' genuine effort in the assessment process difficult to verify. So, supervision or invigilation cannot be carried out because of the distance. Obviously, there are suggestions, for example, of requiring the student to constantly during assessment, constantly open the camera and also the line to actually enable lecturers to see their effort in tackling the question. But the problem is on the restriction of their capacity, especially for example internet access and so on. There would be some problem in that regard. So essentially, students would be left to their own devices with respect to when it comes to assessment. What needs more to be done? For students, make assessment varied and complex to counter cheating collisions. So question could not be a single set of question. There must be maybe multiple set based on maybe numbers of students in the class, or even undertaking the course. Set the parameter in the question. Obviously, it needs to be calculation-based questions. The parameter could be varied based on for different students, so that they could not actually collude and return similar answers, similar script, or plagiarize their peers' works. And obviously, for lecturers, facilitate the marking process of rival scripts through flexible and simple tools. So, with the variedness of the scripts, then the conventional ways of obtaining answers would be very difficult, because it's not one question for all, but it's actually multiple questions just meted up for many students. So the possible solution, especially for design question, could be very much varied based on the judgment of the student, which parameter they want to apply and whatever. So the two lecturers will need some tools to assist them in generating answer scripts, so that they can compare the scripts prepared by the student against the answers. Instead of guesswork. The objectives: collect and pre-process common test results for 2 previous successive semesters, analyze the common test result for descriptive parameters, and scrutinize the tools for algorithmic expediency. And number 3, develop a conceptual framework for the integration of ICT tools into the online academic assessment process. Scope: 1. Study on academic assessment process with ICT facilitation. Where? UITM Cawangan Pulau Pinang. Who? IDP course student from civil engineering undergraduates. How? Common test results. And when? March 2020 to February 2021. Methodology. To start with literature review, theoretical study and critical review. Next, move to the data collection stage. Common test result data collections from the past 2 successive semesters, and then data cleaning and transformation, especially removing the confidential labels. Data analysis, descriptive statistics using SPSS, and scrutinization of tools for algorithm. Next, frame development, conceptual framework development, and finally conclusion and recommendations. So the literature review and data collection will address objective number 1, whereas data analysis will address objective number 2, and finally framework development will address objective number 3. Results and analysis. The first, the diagram shows 2 histograms indicating mark attainment for semester 1 and semester 2, which is the 2 previous successive semesters. So the horizontal axis are the marks, which is converted to percentage, 100%, and the vertical axis will be the frequency. So in terms of the distribution of attainment, basically it is more or less normal lah. For the first semester, the mean is around 54.33, whereas for the second semester 2 will be 48.36. Okay, so a little bit below lah. And also the number of students for the first semester is 27 lah. The sample is 27 and the second 14. So in terms of excellent attainment, excellent grade attainment, meaning 80% and above, or even 75% and above, it is actually not indicated in either semesters. Okay, in the semesters. So it is actually shown that student did not manage to plagiarize ready solution, which we would expect if they were able to obtain that, then obviously the level of attainment would be even better or even more one-sided towards the better sides. And so this is actually comparable to attainment of results from the semester before the pandemic. It's actually comparable. It's not too excellent, it's not too bad as well. Okay, it's quite average, around 50 or 60s, around that. Okay, it's not essentially this is actually design subject. Can consider as difficult by most students. So the attainment is not indicating something which is out of the ordinary. Continuing with the result analysis, the second out of 3. So the diagram shown here are the algorithm. Essentially the algorithm used in the tools for facilitation of or generation of answer scripts for the assessment. So essentially the form is identical to any program given a certain task to do, but there are 2 key attributes which is necessary for any of the program created or tasked to prepare or generate answer scripts for this kind of assessment. So the first would be the iteration anti-prescribed synchronization summary. This is essentially meant for any particular set of questions. In any given set of questions, essentially there are parameters prescribed by the question. Then there are also parameters where students have the liberty to prescribe the values themselves based on their own judgment. So because this is a design subject, this is the nature of the question for the design subject. So obviously for a particular question or particular set of question, there would be some variabilities in the possible answer scripts. So the first iteration would actually meant to address that variability. Okay, so the second iteration, or in this case I call it replication, would be for multiple set question, because of the parameter that is prescribed for different question, set of question are different. So this second iteration would actually meant to address that by having performed the iteration. Okay, so multiple sets of answer scripts could be generated for that particular circumstances. Okay, so essentially, in summary, I would say there would need to be two level of iteration. The first would be for any particular set of question, and the second would be for across the set of questions. Continuing with result analysis, the third out of 3. So this diagram shows the framework for integration of ICT tools into the online academic assessment process. So it is divided into two parts or two sides, which is the lecturer sides and the student sides. So on the lecturer sides, or on the lecturer's perspective, they would prepare questions which they are going to post to the students. The arrow indicating delivery, meaning the questions are posed to the students. So when the student receive the question, they would start to prepare the scripts. And obviously, because of the remoteness of their locations and their perceived lack of individualizations on the part of the lecturers, so they would maybe attempt to solicit some answers from some sources. But because of the nature of the question, which is very varied and also complex, they might not find it very easy to find ready solution for that particular question, especially when we consider there are some limitation in terms of duration of time that they could commit to the answering process. So obviously their effort would be toward most probably would be they would find obstacles to find solution in that through that routes, and they would maybe commit to personal effort probably. And then upon preparation of the scripts, student would deliver back the answer scripts to the lecturers for marking purposes. So for the marking purposes, lecturer would find it difficult because of the nature of the skills written to them, and there would be very varied and also complex as well. So they would need some facilitation or some tools that would help them produce answer scripts which is identical to the set of parameters used by the student in their own preparation of the scripts. So with that achieved by having the tools, then they could perform their task better and then there would be less in terms of difficulties in generating the marks for that particular assessment. So as a conclusion and a recommendation, two contexts need to be needed on the student and lecturer's front. On the student front, as I mentioned, would be the question itself need to be very varied and complex, and on the lecturer side, with the script variability, they would need tools to be provided so that new answer script would be generated based on the circumstances of the question. To ensure success and workability of the prescribed approach, and then constant review and improvement would require as prevailing safeguard are progressively overcome through mechanism and ingenuity. And obviously, if the system or the approach remains stagnant, student would try to find or try to overcome whatever that has been suggested or be recommended in the approach. Okay, so obviously need over time the questioning and also the tools would need to be improved so that the tendency that the system would be obsolete could be reduced. Okay, thank you.